clear, but it was about feng shui.
She included feng
But it
shui
was called
and
Clear Clutter,
it
but
was,
I don't remember
yeah,
the author. It was kind of a smaller book. It wasn't
yeah,
super
a
like
little
big.
blue one.
Oof, I don't know the color. It's been a couple years since I read it, but it's mostly about like feng shui. But she goes in,
Okay.
or I don't know if it was she, whoever goes in the topics about, like you said, because it's not just clearing it, like, okay, it's clean. It's 100% congruent with like your head, right? Like I always tell my daughter that too. I'm like, I remember my husband and I, we'd go upstairs, and one time he's like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "What? Like, is there a spider? Like what?" And he's like, "I can't handle because it's so cluttered." And again, not dirty. There's just
Cluttered.
so much stuff everywhere that he's like, "I got to get out of here," because the energy is just so that you feel it like in your like soul. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
typically, like I run up there, I grab whatever, I do whatever, and I'm back down because it's just so. And then she's like, "Oh, I'm anxious," and like this and that, and I'm like, "I don't sleep," and I'm like, it might help you to kind of go through some stuff and maybe not hang. And granted, she does live in a bedroom. It's not like a full house of her own. So there's part of it, but I really don't think it would be different. I don't think if she had a house or an apartment of her own, she would just find more stuff to buy to. And it's not
Unfortunately, yeah.
for me, it is that whole like what you're saying, like the whole, well, I may use this, I may wear this one day. For her, what I'm gathering is that it's more of like, I don't know if she like feels an energy with the things. Do you know what I mean? Because these are obviously reused items. Like she's bought like I remember at a thrift store she bought like a really, really old school camera. Um like super old school, even in like a little case and everything. And it had photos in there of other people. Like there was a
Okay.
black and white photos, and for me, I'm like history and like, right. Like I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. So like I don't know if there's something with that or if it's psychological in terms of, you know, feeling that way. I don't know what it is, but for her, it's not about I may use this one day at all. Like I don't think it's that.
No.
It's
You
more
know,
of wanting to hold on to the energy.
yeah, and that's really interesting. She could have like a really strong mediumship gift where she's feeling the energy of the old owners where they're like, oh my, like and where they're maybe if they've passed or or if they weren't willing to even like give up the item and how their energy could like can stay with that.
Yeah.
Um, a really good story about that one. We have a friend named Hunter, and he's from Ontario, but he was out in BC here for a while. Now he's back in Ontario again. But the first time that him and B were hanging out, before I ever met him, he had gone to the thrift store and picked up a bunch of clothes. And so he was like wearing like the new clothes, and he's like, all of a sudden, he's like doing one of these and he's just like, oh, like this doesn't feel good. And he's just, stripping in the car and putting on the next item and like, no, I'm, like, and all of a sudden he's like itchy and he's like, he's washed all the clothes. Like it wasn't like they, bought them and were just
Yeah,
putting them
yeah.
on. Like he had, like they were going on a camping trip or whatever. And so he had like all of these clothes packed, but he just all of a sudden he was like, I'm not comfortable. And he just started to change clothes and whatever. So I guess B was like, I think there's something wrong with this guy, because they didn't really talk about it further. He just kept changing clothes until he
Yeah.
found the clothes he was comfortable in. And then about I would say that he said it was probably maybe a couple of weeks later or either way, some time had passed and they were, off on an exploration mission as we always do, but they were off in like the back roads of I think he said in Pemberton. They found like a whole bunch of abandoned cabins and stuff. And they were about to like stop and he goes, "Why is there oh gosh, how did he put it? Uh Crap, what did he call him? Like because his okay, so I'll like just kind of explain his brother and then I can't think of what he called him. But he's like, why is this particular like type of person telling me to not be a dumbass? And I guess B slammed on the brakes and looked at him and said, "Excuse me." And he goes, I have this something cowboy sitting beside me. And his brother, they have like the ginger gene, and both of his brothers are like way bigger than he is. They had the bushy beards, and his one was killed in an accident. A guy was stealing his truck, and he tried to stop him, and he ended up getting crushed between two vehicles as trying to prevent it from happening.
Mhm.
And that was I was living in Red Deer. I had just moved to Red Deer actually when that happened. And uh but regardless, he's like he pulls out his phone and he flips to Facebook and he goes, "Is it him?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's the guy." Because he's like, as soon as he said it, it instantly dinged on him that like that was something that his brother always told him. Don't be a dumbass. Don't be a dumbass, right? Like,
Yeah.
and his
Wow.
explanation, it was something cowboy, and I can't think, I'd have to ask Pete what it was, but uh, he talks about it all the time. And then he realized, and but even at that point, he didn't actually put it right together about the clothes thing. But after he had that experience, and there was no way he had never mentioned his brother, you know, like he'd never brought any of that stuff up, and they weren't friends on Facebook yet. So, you know, like just for him to have the explanation of like the type, you know, the person that this guy was,
Yeah.
and um, and he's like, you know, like maybe he felt the energy from those clothes that he had picked up, and that was what was making him uncomfortable. But, you know, like they weren't strong enough maybe to come through and actually like, you know, sit beside him and give him words, but instead like the last feeling that maybe they had. And so yes, so it's really interesting because yeah, when you said that, that was instantly what like plopped into my mind was that experience with being Hunter. And it's definitely something that like energy could definitely be just attaching to her where, you know, it's something that clearing her energy, grounding, and just finding that protection. But again, there has to be a level of acceptance and willingness to, you know, step in fully into that spiritual realm. And as I know, I experienced multiple levels of things like that throughout my life that I kind of shrugged off and kind of sent away.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, you know, I realized that like it wasn't, you know, 42 was the number. Oh my God, 42 was the number. That was when that was,
Wow.
um, and like, as I just said, I'm like, oh, I realized 42 is the number as I've been like, what does 42 mean?
Right?
Oh my
Wow.
goodness, it's too much. Um, Yeah, so 42 was when I really started experiencing the mediumship, the seeing things, the hearing things. A really crazy story from when I was a kid. When I was about 11 or 12, we had a Nintendo. I think we had the Super Nintendo. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And love to this day, love Mario. You know, I
Yes.
don't get to play a lot of video games, but I mean, if somebody sits me in front of a Nintendo, I will still finish Super Mario Brothers, the first one, from
Yep.
front to back, you know, without dying, right?
Yep.
So,
Love
um,
it.
it's me and my friend Amanda, we were sitting downstairs and we were playing games, and we had two cats and a dog. My dog hated the basement. He used to get separation anxiety and start to chew things. And he was just a little guy. He was cute, little terrier, um, terrier something cross, and cockapoo, and and kind of more of a mutt. He had a lot more, but those are the two really dominant features that he possessed. Very smart and probably way too smart, but he hated the basement because we used to put him down there when my parents would both have to leave. They would put him in the basement, and he absolutely hated it. It did eventually stop him from chewing because he knew that if he chewed, he'd have to spend his afternoon in the basement if we went out, which wasn't all the time. My mom worked from home. It was literally when we were going grocery shopping, and it was too hot
Yeah.
for him to be in the car. You know, like those are the things. So my parents didn't
Yeah.
want to kennel him. The downstairs at that time didn't even have like a closed-in rumpus room. It was very open concept. It wasn't until way later that they had actually filled in the basement. So he had tons and tons of space down there. So it was just, but
Yeah.
I don't know if there was an energy that he picked up or if he felt it was a punishment that he didn't get to be with him. Regardless, he hated the basement. So he never came down. But the cats, on the other hand, my parents didn't want them down there, but they were always down there. And
Hmm.
we used to collect bottles through the summertime. And I mean, for hours and upon hours, like that was our way of paying for our family vacation. So as soon as springtime would come, we would pick all the bottles, bring them home. Dad would, just as we were going to take them in, he'd go to the bottle depot, get the boxes to put them all in. He'd sort them all and then stack them in the corner. So we had just gone through that process the weekend before. So all the bottles are neatly against this back wall beside our freezer and washer and dryer. And there's a window right there. And so we're playing video games. It's definitely still like coming into like late, early spring because it's still like dark early. So the sun was down. And we're playing video games and whatever, and all of a sudden all you hear is the bottles fall. And it sounded like they just come crashing down. Everybody jumped. Mom and dad are yelling at us from upstairs, "What are you two doing?" And we're like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean? What do you mean? What are you doing?" And we're playing video games. Like we were
Yeah.
just literally discussing getting up and going to her house. And everybody ended up going to her house because my parents were friends with their parents and my sister was friends with her sister. And we were all at my house. And everybody got up and we were like, let's go to her house instead.
Yeah.
Because we get up and I was like, well, maybe it's the cats. And they're like, both cats are accounted for. I'm like, dog? They're like, dog doesn't go downstairs. He's at my feet.
Yeah, it
And I'm
doesn't
like,
like it. Yeah.
yeah, little sister? Nope, she's upstairs with Missy. And so we kind of look at each other. So now there's two options. Somebody's broken into the house and come in through that window. We lived in a small town. There was like 20 houses around my block. Now it's like super expanded. But like there was no kids. Everybody was from farms. Like all of my school, there was five, probably maybe up to about 700 kids in my school at that point, and they were mainly brought in from out of town. Nobody lived in my town. My best friend that was at my house was like one of the only people that lived there, which is how we were best friends. Um, so, so we're like, okay, so did somebody break in? So now dad's coming down the stairs and he's like, man on a mission to,
Yeah.
chase whatever's out because now me and Amanda are downstairs as two 11-year-old girls and somebody just knocked over all their bottles. Like that was literally like the thought process. And I don't even think at that age that even crossed mine and her minds because we didn't hear the window open. Like they would have had to rattle it. There's screens and they were locked. So they would have had to make more noise than just the bottles falling. Like that was my thought
Mhm.
process behind all
Yeah.
this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so but to my dad, he wouldn't have heard all that. We were just dumb girls, kids playing video games and they were cranked up. So we could have missed it, right? Like that was his
Right.
thought process. So we go creeping out of the room as my dad comes creeping down the stairs, and we look, and the bottles are still standing.
Wow.
There was
Oh,
no mess because he was like sure that we had done it at that point.
yeah.
Like, because if we hadn't have done it, or like we said, or like I said, there was an intruder, but regardless, there was a mess to clean up.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to Amanda's now. I don't want to clean up the bottle mess. And Dad was like basically trapping us that we were gonna be the ones to clean up the bottles because we were the only ones in the basement. It had to be our fault.
Yep.
Yeah, they weren't on the ground. So,
Wow.
um, so that made us all
And you
leave.
all heard it,
We all heard it.
because when it's one person and you hear something, you see something, and then you ask and they're like, I didn't hear anything, then you kind of almost are like, did I mishear that right? But when
Yep.
everybody hears it, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty wild. Um,
And yeah, and it happened over and over throughout my life where probably every few years something would happen in even in new spaces that I would hear the bottles crash and go looking and they were never on the ground. They were never a mess. It happened in like Calgary just before I moved out of Calgary. Then when I was living in Red Deer, and this is where I was going with this, when I turned 42, I was living in Red Deer. I guess I would have been 41, 42. Yeah, I would have been as well. I've been out here for 3 years. I turned 44, 41. So it was the 41 turning into 42, I suppose, that this really started to get strong. And then at 42 was like the big shift into, well, 41 it had already really started, but 42 was like, it just got to the point where the pain was just too much. And then that's where everything shifted. It was when I turned 42 or 40, yeah, 42, because I just turned 43. So yeah, so 42 was like literally when life changed for me, like 100%. But this is in the year just prior to this, or 2 years prior to this, I'm living with my friend Derek, and like strange things happened in that apartment. Like, I mean, we could go if we wanted to talk horror movies. Like, this was a moment of my life where I had created my life as a horror movie, and it was a haunting, and it was not a nice haunting. But there was like, um, there we would see somebody come through our front door, like, and we all witnessed it, not all together, but we all talked about it. The person that continually came into the front door and went into the closet. Well, Derek decided that he wanted to know when this entity was coming through the house, and he hung the bottles up on that door. And one day, me and Jeremy were in the bedroom. We were arguing. This was the guy that almost killed me. And we were arguing about whatever. And what distracted us was the front door opening, slamming, and then the bottles actually falling off of the closet door. And when we went into the closet, like, there was an extra inch gap between the back wall and the closet. And I stocked that closet. I put all the stuff in that closet away. There was no gap. There was no gap in the wall when I did this. And I was like, that is super crazy. But the bottles were all over the floor. And I said, for all the years that I've heard this noise, this is the first place that I've actually had to clean up the bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and then
Wow.
from there I left Red Deer because that was like just overwhelming. But then that's when my gifts started to like really, really like show. And then like through the pain, like that was the one thing that really started happening. My psychic, like the premonitions and the all of the knowing and the stuff like and all of the things started happening. And then when the pain lifted, my ego came back. And all of a sudden, like my gifts were like non-existent, it felt like. And I was like, well, maybe I am crazy, like, because all of the things I could hear voices, I could hear like my family while I was awake, not just in my dream space, but while I was awake. And then all of a sudden my ego's back and all of those words, like all of the hearing and the seeing and all of that stuff, it went back into like impression. But that's kind of like sitting in that space was kind of what brought me to the realization that like my ego played a big role in closing off some of the doors that had been opened. And it's just finally getting back to the point where I feel like it was gone until yesterday when it decided to rear its ugly head and make me have a human day, and like one that had me in flight or flight. It wasn't even gentle. It was like a fight or flight, like breaking off my relationship in 3 years and being like, I need
Um,
space and I need to be by myself and you need to go. And he's like,
yeah.
I'm not just gonna abandon you because you're having a bad day. He's like, and I'm like, are you sure?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was and then I had a meeting and then I had my meeting. I was like tired eyes, freaking cried out eyes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I'm going into this meeting. I don't even know what it's about at this point. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, how am I going to do this? But I shrugged it off and shook it off. And no, it was actually really good. So
awesome. I mean, it all happens, but but like how often does it happen? And then like how often do we stay in that? So like I used to live in that type of stuff. Like that was just me. And now it's like when I have those moments, like it doesn't last very long. I mean it's extremely uncomfortable, but within I mean, not that long, like I'm able to shift out of it. Like I had one of those today myself too. And interestingly enough, it was after my past life regression, which is kind of odd. But
no, I actually realized that probably would have triggered it. It was a kind of a past life thing with me and my like I dealt with some stuff with my sister for my sister, not with my sister. Her nephew got married without telling her, and so I helped shift her out of that energy, but it retied an energy tie that I'd been working super hard because I love my sister and she's like my soul, like she comes from my soul, place of my soul.
yeah.
And so she's been the one that's I've had probably the hardest time breaking the tie with, and I felt it come back, and then that's where my ego kept in. So you just stepped in. So when you stepped into your past life regression, you
Mm,
probably awaken the ego into some degree, but you probably stirred up some cords that you've been working on releasing with, it might just be happening naturally as you've been progressing, letting go
Yeah.
of some of those past life ties. But as you step into that information. So sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, I
Yeah.
want
No, you're good. I'm gonna just touch on one thing really fast. So when you were talking about the situation of the bottle, so this is wild, and I was trying to do the math in my head. So when I was in between like fourth and sixth grade, which I think was around the same time, so because
Mhm.
I was 4 when I started kindergarten, so around that same age, I also had a best friend, blah blah, a best friend named Amanda.
Really?
No joke. And she and I were like the only like we knew other people, other kids, and we talked to other kids and stuff, but typically it was just me and her.
Hmm.
Like that was it. Like people would like literally like not make jokes, but they would always comment on how like we do everything together.
Yeah.
And she also had a sister. I didn't, but and then also during that same time period, I also had 2 cats and a dog. And my dog was a
Oh,
mutt. Because you're saying this, and I'm like, okay, stop it. Like literally stop. My dog was not a terrier, it was a cocker spaniel, but she was like a mutt. And then I
yeah.
had the two. We didn't have a basement, but those are still pretty 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 I don't know. I just like I almost want to write down all the stuff that we have like in
Like,
alignment because
right.
it keeps adding up. It's pretty wild.
All the
Um
signs and synchronicities, right? And it was
like what does
interesting
it mean?
because
I don't know, but
I'm sure it'll show itself eventually, but like that was like me in meeting my friend Jane. Like we don't have like a whole lot of similarities, but
Mhm.
when I did a timeline therapy with her, we discovered that we were killed together in a past life for being witches, essentially.
Wow.
Apparently, I've been killed lots of times for being a witch in my life, in my lifetimes, which is why
Yeah.
when my ego is present, I think there becomes I think it kind of unleashes like that fear of how people will treat me, even though like
Mhm.
I myself like talking about it and being present and wanting to do more with it and podcasts and being out there and shining my light and bringing the people in and sharing all the information and stuff like that. Like I don't feel a fear of um essentially of like repercussion, like somebody's going to come stone me
Yeah.
to death or burn me at the cross or whatever,
Yeah.
those are just, a couple of the ways that, shine lights, from past lives and stuff. But yeah, me and her, like, we instantly clicked and she's like, I don't click with people. And I was like, it happens for more people with me than for me with more people. I'm like,
Mhm. Gotcha.
I found like broadcasting kind of gave me a space where whether I was really a big fan of somebody or not, they could still get their time in with me
Mhm.
without me like without me hurting their feelings when I'm like, oh, I don't have time to talk right now or whatever that case may have been. And and I find that my like it's not even remotely untrue when they say when you have like a really strong energy that the people just flock to you
Mhm.
um and I don't know, like, and I don't know if it's because of my own gifts and the energy that people put off and what I sense about people that really makes me usually just, turn the other cheek. I don't get close to people really fast. Um, and if I do, it's instant. So, like there's no middle ground. Like one of my exes always said that, you're either all in or all out. And he's like, I don't know if I can handle that because you have no middle ground.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm like, I really guess I don't have a middle ground. Like I don't make space. If I can't give you what you want from me, then I don't make that space. Like,
Mhm.
people who want like men in general, I would say that want relationships that I'm like, I don't feel that way about you. Like I'm that girl that can be friends with everybody because I don't get attractions to people. I don't literally like, I'm like, I, and then like the relationship like with my ex-husband was 11 years from the time I was 16 and he, if I had a type, I would say that he wasn't it.
Mhm.
And to boot, he turned out to be really, really mean. So he really definitely is not it. So, like
Yeah.
how, but I kept seeing they, that was before I had an idea about energy and how I like mirror myself within people. So always looking to heal, always, always wanting to be that healer to make life better for somebody. Um, my ex of 9 years. we never got married, but we were common law. And I raised his two girls with him. But he was somebody that I had a crush on from the time I was like 11 years old. He had been in my life for so many years by the time we even like looked at each other in that way. But I was always capable of being his friend without any expectations of anything else for what we were like 6 years apart and or 5 years apart. Yeah, and I was friends with his sister. So, like it took a long time. Like even when we started hanging out after my marriage had ended, it took me a long time to like even step into that. So, all of the, well, what could I lose by stepping into this? And did I lose it all? Yep. But not it to a degree, yes. I mean, I'm still welcome in all of their homes and he still creeps my TikTok and, I mean, he has to hate that TikTok tells me that he creeps on me, but whatever. Um, but yeah, and then from there, I just stopped, uh, especially since that turned out to be such a narcissistic and hard relationship. I had no interest in forming anything other than friendships, and even friendships were hard to deal with because then people wanted my time, and I wanted my time back. And and that's where me and Rustin were talking about balance on his live on TikTok and like why my name is I am unbalanced on Instagram. So, so he's like,
Yeah.
you don't really feel like an unbalanced person until we started talking about how like, like as my pain crept in, I stopped seeing people in real life and I started an online life. And that completely took me away from my parents, my sister. Like I literally shut everything in the real life. I always had my phone on and in my hands. And
Mhm.
then when my relationship that was in the States went south, that started from that app, and everybody that was on there was in some way associated with him and I together. And so then I shut that down. And then I didn't want anything to do with social media again. And I didn't, so I didn't go on Facebook. I didn't do Instagram. I didn't do any of it. Like I did live me every so often. Other than that, I didn't have any social media presence, period.
Mhm.
And then, um, and then I had my one best friend and he was gay. So, that was perfect for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because any guys around were generally gay too. And so I was like, this is perfect, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. And then so, so again, I shut off online. So then in coming out of my pain and then wanting to build an online presence, that's where my unbalance came back because like I had completely like I went from one extreme to the next extreme, back to the other extreme, and now here I'm working on a balance between, having the people online and people offline. And,
Mm.
I'm being able to maintain and, a good sense of and find a sense of community is something that I never had before. And so joining the YMCA. And this is actually kind of what triggered everything yesterday because like we do so much exploring and the spot that we were at, we have like no shade. It's already hot. It's already hot here.
Yeah.
Like we're like America hot, We're like Florida hot almost, it feels like.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And and living without shade and air conditioning. And he's talking about turning on a fridge, and I'm like, we are going to melt. Like we are not going to be okay if we stay where we're at, but we don't have another space that would be easy for us to move to yet. And that's where I'm like, okay, universe, I can see my future. I know where we're at with this. Like it is time. Like I am all sorts of feeling it. And so I was like, what do I need? Like, like what am I struggling with? And it was rounding people up and putting them in one place and keeping, and actually still like maintaining that presence online, even when I'm not available online, is maintaining that presence there. So the girl that I met yesterday, she's like, I'm great at that. And she wants to be in my program and she wants a reading. And I said, okay, well, how about this? I will hire you. Your first payment will be your reading in my program because that's generally 2 months of pay, essentially, at a part-time job, which I'm not going to require you all of your time. I like an hour a day, essentially, just
Yeah.
to make sure that, my posts are getting, posted and get some engagement going. Get people actually coming to book club, like, like just, and
Right.
then and then going through my online platform and emailing people that are in the program and see how they're doing with it and holding them accountable, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so I went from having like an extremely human moment into a meeting that was completely, hi, kitten, completely spiritual. Do you want to come in? You want to come in? Hi, kitten. Okay, why are you going on the roof? Hi, coming in? Do you need
Oh.
the door closed a little more? You want my leg? Oh, okay. That's a way to do it. Are you coming back in? Come on, hurry up. It's kind of chilly with that wind. Come on. Yes, I know I know they're all around. I will let you out. I promise. You're not stuck here
Oh,
forever. But then and then with her too. And it's so interesting how much my cat has been the synchronicity and sign for like
mm,
my last couple meetings, like my last reading that I did on Saturday, like my cat was like and like whatever she thought she was missing in her reading for the synchronicity and signs that she was asking for, my cat finished. And then I call her Kitten Little. Like I always
mm.
call her Kitten Little. And Tressa is from Spain and speaks very fluent, very fast Spanish that I only caught mucho mucho hot, because her daughter was with us and she's 5, and she
Oh,
knows mainly Spanish, but a little bit of but she is learning the English. And but I call this one Kitten Little, and I can't remember
yeah.
what she gave me the Spanish word for it, but it was Canita or something like that.
Okay.
And it means little kitten, essentially. And so she's like, and they had the same cat in Spain when she was still in Spain. That was her cat. And so the fact that I called it the same thing that they, you know,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
called her cat. I was like, if she was looking for any like higher synchronicities to why, she's like, I've been staring at you for a month. She goes, I don't know if you've noticed that. She goes, but from the first time that I've seen you, and she's like, she's like, I just felt like I needed to know you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Right? Like, and then yeah, and then we call our cats the same thing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like what are the chances? Obviously
Wow.
pretty high when the universe is involved. But, like if I asked for the signs of, who I needed, and to boot, it's somebody in person. It's not just like an online presence, because
Yeah.
then that was like my cards recently was like, like to have that sense of community, and all of a sudden I'm working volunteering at the Y and meeting this girl at the Y who's now going to be my employee. And I'm
Wow.
like, oh my goodness, like go universe, like
Ah,
because in my most human moment, you showed me how not human I am, essentially. I guess if that makes any sense. Like for as human as I am, it showed me how much I have embraced and shifted and changed, because my human moment like lasted a few hours, but I mean that's nothing compared to what the weeks, months, years even that I feel like I was trapped in that anxiety and that what are you trying to get, kitten? Let me wait, like for you. What would you like?
well, I mean, that just goes to prove that like manifestation doesn't come about based on your mood,
No.
right? Like so, and I've even heard of people like manifesting things when they're angry, when they're sad, when they're whatever, right? Because it has nothing to do with that, you know?
it's it's all about vibration and frequency. So I
Yep.
was, and then that's where I get a little bit conflicted, because I know you don't want chocolate, you want treats. Here, hold on. Um, because it's like in raising your vibration and frequency, we spend a lot of time working at getting that vibration and frequency out in joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But joy and happiness, because though, especially when you're in the process of just learning how to stay in those vibrations, they still may. I know you don't like those ones, but those are all that's in here, so eat them. Oh shit. Um, so then it's like, does taking, even though you're like in yesterday, then looking at Yuki's contrast conversation, and then actually doing a meditation that I've done numerous times, and for the first time heard her talk about the contrast, and I'm like, huh. okay, you know, like,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's like in that contrast moment, was I releasing maybe some of the buried, hidden stuff that was still lowering that happiness vibration, that was still lowering that excitement, that maybe I wasn't willing to acknowledge was still there, and that in that contrast eliminated that, like took out that lower vibration energy, gave it an escape, and even though it felt maybe uncomfortable and bad to me, on the
Yeah.
other side, once it was past, that elevated excitement, that elevated joy, the ultimate love of talking about this, because that's really what at that point came through for me, was realizing that like even stepping out of a human experience of like high, heavy emotion, the love for the spiritual conversation, the love that I have to share this information with others was really, really, really what I felt in having the conversation with her. Like there was no, you know, I mentioned the fact that I was having like that human moment, and she goes, "Oh, no worries, I had one earlier as well, or the day
Oh,
before." She goes, "I was really kitten. You're being rude, man." Oh, and she pooped.
oh
Lovely.
no.
Um, I have spray smelling stuff. She has a kitty litter in here. She generally goes outside, but she tends to, for whatever reason, still come in here.
Yeah, that's funny. Our cats have, my daughter has a two like giant cat litter boxes up in her room in the closet. And I think they prefer to go outside. I mean, they do go outside, but I'm saying I think they prefer to go to the bathroom outside, which is odd. Because she cleans them. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It's
It took
just cats are funny.
it took us a couple years. Okay, so we went on a hike. She almost broke my leg. We ended up he ended up having to cut down a couple of trees with a machete so we could cross the river that we were on the other side of.
Mhm.
And he was doing that as I was still determining whether like I had a bone sticking out of my leg or not. He wasn't even willing to come check it out. He was just, you know, so I was recording. I have it all. I don't have like the actual accident on tape, but I have her. I have pictures of her. She looked like I was wearing a raccoon hat because of the way she was like flat on my head with her tail. It
Yeah.
literally looked like I had a raccoon hat on my head.
Oh my
And she
gosh.
felt bad. She felt bad for she didn't mean to hurt me. She was just trying to jump on my back up out of the snow. It was this was spring of last year, so the water was just starting to flow in the river again. And we couldn't, it was enough that we couldn't just jump over it, especially not with my leg if I had fractured it or whatever. And
Mm,
but she had jumped on my back and the snow broke underneath my feet and I slipped. And the only thing that kept me from going into the river and floating down this river in the ice cold, which I would have ended up home a lot faster, to be fair. It was
yeah,
only
right.
750 meters and this river went straight to our house. So I would have
Wow.
eventually just like been able to probably crawl off at home, but I would have
Yeah.
been wet, cold, and really even probably more upset than I was because I wasn't even upset with her. It just really like I slipped and the wood that stopped me just like flat into my shin and just snapped and my whole
Mm,
body folded. And I screamed and because he was looking for a place for us to cross already without having
yeah.
to go back and up and walk the entire route again. Um, with the way that it was shaped, like we could have just went up and then further down, but he's like, well, let's get you across the river here, like we're so close to home, I'll go get the vehicle and come back and get you, like let's just get you across.
Yeah.
And this was just after, like, this was only two, three, 3 months after the recode. So, okay, so 3 months after my pain had healed completely. I'd just done my fear of heights. But I wasn't, you know, when we were still living on the Sunshine Coast, there was this huge fallen tree. And I'm saying it's about as wide as what our car is. And it was over like this. It wasn't even a hard fall. I could have fallen and it wouldn't have hurt. And it was full of moss. Like it was a safe space. I got halfway across this tree without having handrails and my body froze. And I couldn't get myself to sit down. My
Mm.
legs wouldn't let me sit down. I couldn't move. And he had to come back and rescue me on this huge ass tree. I could have sat down. I could have spun around in circles on my butt and not have my feet go over the edge. That's
Oh,
how bad my fear of heights at that point was. So
gotcha.
here he's cut down these two trees and they're probably this thin, you know, barely fit my feet on them. And he cuts them down, he cuts two of them down and we're like, okay, he's like, you start going across the trees. And so I still like really like, you know, kind of hands and knees it, but I'm like getting across just on a single one. I wasn't even using the second one because they were still kind of, they were thinner trees, so they were still kind of wobbly.
Yeah.
And so I was just taking my time and going. Well, he was coming, he's like, oh, I'll come help you. And he steps on the wood and I'm like, get off, get off, get off, get off, because he started to
Yeah.
shake it. And then all, you know, like there that it, she just left the car. She just went out the right side. She pooped and then left. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's why it stinks. Yep. Exactly what happened. So the cat jumps onto the wood, climbs over me and goes around, and I get over to the other side, and he's just like, he was just dumbfounded. He's like, I never ever anticipated you getting across there by yourself.
Oh,
And and yeah, and he like literally thought he was gonna have to help me because I like he watched me freeze on like this huge wood, and here we are on like an eighth of the size of the wood that I couldn't cross.
yeah.
And after that I was like, wow, you know, because as I was like prepping myself, I was like, hey, higher self, I'm like, we got this, right? I'm like, I'm gonna make it across this river without floating down the river to home. I'm like, my leg is holding me up somehow, you know, because at that point it had really swollen and it was already pretty black. But I
Mhm.
figured it wasn't cracked or broken, just, you know, really bruised. And
Yeah.
and yeah, so we get across this wood, and he like literally like just I could just feel his eyes just staring at me like
What just
something,
happened?
yeah, what just happened? Something changed. Like as much as I could look down the side of a mountain, the fact that I just like really with like a leg that's like pretty much bum at this point, and just crossed the thinnest piece of wood, even though there was two there. I just used one, and he still was like, wow, like I can't believe I just witnessed you doing that. And so it was a really good feeling. And at that point, you know, like, I mean, I already had like no doubt, like there was this like strong connection between me and my higher self with all of the changes that had happened with the pain and the fear of heights going away, and then now I can walk across the wood. And you know, and as time passed and you don't do that kind of stuff, you would think that maybe like some of the fear would creep back in because of cellular memory and stuff like that. That's, I think, one of the biggest things with the ego being present is it does have a tendency to allow that cellular memory to come back in. So if you give it any type of attachment to that old story, the ego just reforms that old
Yeah.
story. You know, that's why pain will stay or come back. You know, it'll be gone for a few days, and then all of a sudden your ego is telling you, well, you know, that couldn't have happened. Whereas I didn't have that on my initial recode. Like it just wasn't there. And it didn't come until after, and then it rewoke some of the previous stories, of course, but those were a little bit, you know, I never ever let them settle. As soon as I feel that inkling of them coming up, I'm constantly talking to myself through like the words of the recode and going back and finding all the things and going into the Akashic records and doing all of that work as it's coming up, because I'm like, I don't need that memory back there. I'm like, I'm ready. I'm letting it all go.
Yeah.
And
Diligent.
yeah. And then we go to, so a few months later, while we were out here, we were going on a hike up by the KVR, and there was this river and another like solid log across it. And he's like, you know, looking for better ways. And I just go walk across. And even he was like, you know, on there and almost struggling a little bit coming across
Uh,
this wood. And I just boop, boop, boop. And he was just like, man, I feel like we've switched roles.
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. It's definitely stepping into that like different identity,
Yeah.
you know, because once you do it, like you genuinely like don't remember um like what it used to be like. You know what I mean? Like I've stepped into different identities myself from previous ones. Like my main one was like depression. Like I used to identify with all that. And now it's like if I were to think back or if I read like old journals or something, and I'm like, I genuinely like there's a hint of remembrance of like, yeah, okay, but not where you feel it. You know, I'm just like, huh, because it's so far, not far as in time, but far from the identity that I have now that it's like I can't, I'm like, I don't even. I don't even remember that. You know what I mean? Because you've shifted so much. So I think it's really, really cool. Like it's really, really cool.
It's an interesting feeling, like having yesterday's like stuff pop up at me. I'm like, no, I don't like this. This is not me anymore. Like this is um I had been kind of, I guess, feeling trapped for a while, but not in my relationship, which is the funny thing about it. I don't feel trapped there, and I know that like our limited space is literally, I have a whole forest of space that I can literally go run into, which was his whole point yesterday. He's like, you're not trapped here. You can go anywhere. It might have to be on foot because the car's not like, running the best, and that's my big thing, not having a like properly running vehicle of my own, like all of the things that I said that I would always have. And and right now I'm pretty much living without all of the things that I said I would always have. So
Um,
there was kind of, but again, I feel like there's a reason for that. That,
yeah.
again, releasing that old identity, because it is still something that I see for myself in the future, still having all of those things. Like I will have a vehicle again, it will be mine. I will have a place again, it will be mine.
Yeah.
I'll call it ours if he's
Yeah.
lucky. But regardless, he'll always have a space there. But but it's like shedding that control, shedding that and I guess maybe even right until we had this conversation right now, maybe I didn't even see it so clearly as I do right now, is the fact that I've always known that there's a reason why we've been kind of stuck here. And
Mhm.
maybe I hadn't really been walking into the reason of why we were, not stuck. We're like literally not stuck, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, without making more, steps of like, we have a few properties we've been offered that we can go stay on, but again, it's somebody else's place, where you have to mind their rules, mind their pets, mind their space. Whereas up here, like we're out of the way, nobody bothers us here. We can move around this whole space, but it's beating up our car. Like it is literally trashing this thing. And no, excuse me, there is like more spaces around here that we can take ourselves and go and tuck ourselves, which is definitely what we've been talking about. But it's just a matter of finding the right spot that's still going to have us like away from the people. Like there's all these people around here doing things, but as you go higher up, it's less and less people. But then again, we're going higher up, which is like a longer drive away. Then it's paying attention to like um internet, and as you go up around a couple of the corners, you kind of lose the internet. So what does that mean for me and my stuff? Like
Yeah.
um so yeah, so it's just like, pondering the different uh aspects, and what comes next for us. And to me, it's like, well, this spot is safe, it's secure, it's out of the way, nobody bothers us. We can move 100 yards or whatever it is if we need to. And, we have moved around the space already, quite a few times, and always just kind of end up back in here. But then at the same time, it's like, again, we're coming up into the hot summer and I want shade. So then there's the trusting the process and trusting that you're stepping into that identity of having, you know
Yeah.
so there's and that's where he gets into, he's like, well, we don't have the money yet. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, yeah, keep telling my brain that, like, no, I'm trying to convince it the otherwise. Like, I need you on board with that. Pretend for a moment we have the money, right? Like,
Yeah.
help me out. And that's where yesterday, where I was really up and down. I was like, okay, well, is he still supporting my purpose? Like, is he still helping in a big way? And yes, he is. And he's still, that's a struggle in his mind. It's like, well, we can do all these things once the money is here. I'm like, well, what are you doing to help us get the money here? Like, you are a master manifester. You're better manifester than I am on a good day, and I'm a good one. So I'm like, like, where's your mind at? And like, you can't, yeah, you have to make some more shifts. And I'm like, have you figured out what you want to do yet? And his answer is continually no. And I'm like, well, what are you doing with your time? I'm like, I know what I'm doing with my time. Like, is there any way possible that you can use your time to, find some clarity? And so, then the conversation comes back to having it with his higher self versus his like ego self. And I feel like his higher self smokes too much weed. So it's like, I'm like, it's just little things that that yesterday turned into huge things, turned totally into fight or flight. It's like, well, if you're not with me, you're against me. It's like, I'm not against you. And I'm like, but if you're sitting here telling me that the money's not there, when I'm sitting over here saying the money is here,
Yeah.
and yeah, we can't make a move until like the literal like appearance of the money is here. But but we can still look for what we want. We can still find the
Yeah.
places. That's why I went, I'm back to the point where I'm like, okay, we got to go look at another house again because my brain really did shift there. And like maybe we go drive around and look at more properties and stuff like that and finds more for sale signs out in the areas that I was looking at. And and just start doing more exploring and looking at spots because like that seems to get that energy flowing. And I know that now that the program's complete and all of those things, like that energy is definitely moving a lot better. I went back today and did a few meditations from Jen, and the energy felt different to me. Like I started to get flashes of weird things, actually, now that I think about it. But I don't know what that thing was. You know where the wild things are? Have you seen
Yeah.
that? Okay,
Yeah.
it was
And we have,
something that looked like the brown character, like the brown dude, the
oh,
big
yeah.
the big
What is it
big dude.
called? Hold on. What is it called? Does it have a name?
I don't even know. You know what? I don't even know if I've seen that whole movie, to be honest. I just know that like in my mind, like whatever this meditation, like wherever I was, like and I don't know if maybe it's a spirit guide that kind of come through, but it legit, like as I'm like looking at it, it looked like a scary Care Bear, or not a scary Care Bear, an Ewok, almost like an Ewok, but bigger. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting, like, something to come through on a meditation, but
Oh,
um,
the isn't it a wildebeest maybe?
maybe that it definitely could fall under the wildebeest category for sure.
I feel like, hmm.
Yeah, because it was like right in my face, and I was like, "Oh, are you a guide?" Like, I don't know.
Well, the book is from like 1963,
Yeah,
but
and
I
then
know
the movie
they,
was just did the movie not that long ago. I mean, it probably
yeah,
is probably like 10, 20 years now, but probably 10
yeah.
years, I would say, somewhere in there. Mhm. But yeah, it was a really interesting flash dream and meditation. This like kind of almost shook me out of it, and I'm just like, "Hey," I'm like, "Who are you?" or "What are you?" I don't know what the right question is to ask here.
Hmm.
But the energy moved differently. Like whereas, because she's very, I mean, starting to do her meditations, it was where I started to see the colors and I could pick up on the different angels and my different spirit guides. And I kind of stepped away from those because I felt like stepping into Yuki stuff, it was more the embodiment of my higher self
Yeah.
and the true embodiment of my new identity. And not that that takes my guides. I always every day set my intentions to have my guides give me signs and guide me along my way. Like I never ever stopped doing that in all of this, but I stopped doing like the meditations where I would call on them and ask them questions. So I've gone back to that practice. And I've had really good talks with Michael. Like I think I told you he was like following me around in one of my dreams the other night. And uh so and this time around doing the meditations, it's instead of just intending to know that the energy is doing what she says it's doing, it was actually feeling and sensing. And it wasn't just a knowing, it was I could feel the movement of the energy through and around me. And that was new even for like how much I progressed in her class in doing it, in my connections and stuff like that. That I guess that was always a question. Like I never really felt the energy. It was just always that set intention where I just truly believed that it was happening. I didn't really get to see it and feel it. And now I was this morning and doing the few that I did just a few short ones, and I felt the energy move with everything that she said and everywhere she said the energy would be and move. And I even like even went in like to call out certain things, like because I hadn't done them, there was no memory of what they were actually going to be, and I actually like set signs for myself of what was going to come through and what she was going to say, and pretty much got all of them. And I was like, okay, I like this. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah, if it works, keep doing it.
That's right.
That's so cool. That's really cool.
I felt bad I missed the calls last night. I don't even know how the time got away from me yesterday, but we were
You know, I
grocery
was like
shopping.
this close to messaging you, and I was like, no, because just from what I think you had told me earlier and stuff. So I was like, well, maybe she's busy or like whatever, whatever. So, but yeah, I was like this close. And it was funny because Tom even talked about his presentation, and then he was like, Laura was there. He's like, I don't know, Laura, are you here? And then I was like, no. And then again, I was almost gonna message you, and I was like, no, I was like, she's an adult, like she can make it if she wants to.
Not very adulty adult some days, but yesterday I was really like I said, I had such a human day yesterday that I I don't know, maybe there could have been space for like not being there, and it definitely for not being there, and for the time that it was like if I was meant to be there, my higher self would have been like on top of that. Like there, because I knew the calls were that night. For whatever reason, I keep waking up thinking that they're Monday morning, and I think that's because Monday mornings I'm hosting my call now for my program. Like Rustin was there yesterday, which was awesome. Like I think he just like swung through, which was fine with me. But it lit up the eyeball at the top, and I was like, yay! Whether you're here or not, at least it gave me an eye that it showed me that there was somebody there. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, and it definitely helps in keeping the words moving, whether they stay or not. As long as that one eyeball is there, it's like, okay, well, even if I know you're not there, I'm still gonna, it gives me that opportunity to talk. So, so yeah, so I started doing that. So I don't know if maybe that's like my Monday morning wake up. It's like, yo, there's something that you need to do. There's something that you need to do, and I just constantly think it's Yuki's, and then oh no, it's yours. It's like, oh, it's mine. Okay.
Yeah.
and and then Monday, and I don't know, I'm not an evening around the time where he holds the calls is, and I still feel like sometimes it's part of the old identity, but that's generally when, we're cooking and
Mm,
so on. But we weren't even home yet. We were by the time I looked at the clock and was like, oh, Yuki's calls are 2 hours ago. Shit. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So um so I feel like there was just kind of giving myself the space to absorb that human emotion, um and just know that like the even having that meeting at 1 o'clock, that the amount of love that was embodied within myself for it. I think there was like this space of you're okay without going today. And
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, like not to maybe not like maybe it would have been indulging in somebody else's human experience, like uh like depending I mean I haven't watched replays or anything like that, but like depending on what the conversation is there, like it might have triggered something in my ego to hang on to that human experience. Would be like is what just kind of popped into my head. Like I hadn't even considered that and why I missed him. I didn't even like really, I guess, ponder the reasons on why I wasn't there until now. But like had something been said that triggered me back into that human moment, like that kind of thing, and just giving
Mm.
that space to stay out of it. But regardless, it's
It was
yeah.
mostly, it was funny because we got off the call and I was like, did we just go to coaching lab? Rustin's like, what? Because it was mostly, he asked if there's any wins or celebrations. And like we went, but Rustin was mostly talking about his um presentation for his 3 days.
Yeah.
And then Tom talked about his. And then it was mostly like business stuff and or like um yeah, it was mostly business stuff and then celebrations. And then a
Right.
little towards the end, he talked about like pain and how you kind of separate from that and so forth. But that was like the last 10 minutes. And the rest of the time was just us talking about our wins. So, um, I don't want to say, like, would I go again? Yes.
Hmm.
But it's not necessarily something that you missed out on. Does that make sense? Like, in terms of,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's
Oh
always
yeah,
great energy,
definitely.
don't get me wrong, but like, you could have missed it and you would have been fine.
Okay. And
So
and that
yeah.
could have been where my higher self was too. Like, this isn't what you need
Yeah.
right now. Like yeah, just, because I did take some quiet space after that as well. And I can't remember, honestly, like when I'm looking at last night, I honestly don't know what I did.
And to be honest, maybe that's why I didn't actually reach out to you and message you and be like, hey, because like I said, there was a split moment where I'm like, why don't you? And then it was like, no. And I was like, well, why not? And then I'm like, no. And then I ended up not. So maybe that was why too. Because it was in the very beginning that whole like 3 second dialogue happened. But that must have been why too that I ended up not. Because usually I do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and then
so
usually they're like there's really, like I honestly think our higher selves like chill together, you know.
right, just
Then,
hang
just
out. Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
just
Like
hang
you
out.
don't nah.
I know, like I know she gets around. Um my friend Jordan, she's in Georgia, and we haven't talked like on a human level because she's still like going around in circles and stuff like that in her human story. And I've given her all the healing. Like, I mean, I know that I've healed her like colitis, but she had to hold on to that old story because she felt that her husband was going to leave if she was healed. Like, I mean, like, so she's like, he only pays me attention when I'm sick, and I'm only sick when I have this. So if I tell him it's gone, then he won't pay attention to me. That was literally her words. And so it was like, okay, well, I can't, you know, I can give you your tools. No, excuse me, I can give you your tools, but I can't change your whole life for you. Like, you still
Yeah.
have to, step up and start making the good changes. And the most interesting thing that kind of comes up for me when it comes to her is the fact that I can still feel that our higher selves are still chilling, like talking, waiting for the day that she actually like, you know,
Mm,
embodies and allows that identity shift and clear some of the allows the healing, the actually gives permission for that for everything to kind of herself to embody. But
mm,
in July, I had told her go to rehab. And she didn't have an alcohol problem. She didn't have a drug problem, maybe a food problem, but she used to smoke weed and it's illegal in Georgia. And so she had her kids taken away because of Delta 8 or whatever that synthetic whatever is, which she was using for anxiety. And somebody had their hate on for her. And again, like if you look at it as you're creating your own life, to listen to her talk, you would know that she created everything that happened.
mm,
Okay.
yeah.
So July comes around and I was like, I see you getting your children back, but I'm like, take yourself to rehab. Go to rehab, even if it's over the Delta 8, even if it's over something that you don't have a problem for right now. I'm like, go to rehab. Don't give them any more reason to hold this stuff against you. I'm like, take yourself through a program that's going to better you, allow you to heal, allow you to embody some of the stuff that we are working through right now. But the state is going to want you to go to rehab. She didn't have an alcohol problem. She also disappears and she starts getting drunk every day. She got caught stealing, almost ended up in jail, and lo and behold, ends up in rehab.
Wow.
And I was like, and then they were taking the kids and they weren't giving them back. And she goes, but you said, and I said, I told you to go to rehab. I gave you the exact necessary steps without even realizing it was a psychic intuition. Like it
Yeah.
was I didn't understand that was all from like the knowing, an ultimate knowing
Mhm.
of what was to come, because I didn't see her turning to alcohol. I didn't see all of that part of it. All I knew was go to rehab, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to make a difference in your life, find yourself in rehab, and whatever the purpose you look for it is, I'm like, just get yourself there. I didn't mean go get an alcoholic problem to take you to
Yeah.
rehab. Because I mean, and that's where that whole like scenario shifted, and that's where I don't like the psychic gift, because it's like you can shift the energy, you can change how things look, but if you put something in somebody's ego, if you give something, the way the energy is now, and you give them something even when it's good, that energy can shift. They could they could step in a different direction. They'll still get to what you told them, but it can, instead of where I seen her having her children back in the 3 month time frame, she's looking at 3 years now, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a big shift because she, instead of taking it as a, oh, here's something positive to look forward to, let me do all the good things to make everything great happen, she went the total right wing or left wing. I don't even know which way is the right wing anymore. Left or right. I don't know which wing is a bad wing anymore. I don't think any of them are bad wings, but regardless, she just went the opposite direction. And instead of making life easier for herself and doing the good things, she did the bad things. And I'm like, and talking to my sister and having a detective to, because I don't know if my brother-in-law's mom is sick or what. I know she is getting up there in age, but she had the request that she sees her oldest son and wants to talk to him. And he's hasn't been around for at least 15 years now, ish, give or take. I think Zach was around 5 when he left. So none of us have spoke to him in that time. And he popped up once or twice, but just disappeared. So his mom wants to see him. And so my sister just, as the universe works, a detective comes in, and now my sister's working with a detective to find him and get the word to, at least to him. And I said, well, if he accepts the word and he shows up, I said, just know that Mac is, because she asked Mackenzie if he would want to see him. And he's like, yeah, you know what, I would. and and then I had like this flash, and it wasn't like like where it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen when he sees them. It was legit. I was standing there watching them, and I text my sister. I said, look, I said, it's going to come to fruition. I said, if you're looking for him, you want him back, I'm like, he's going to show up. I said, but it's going to be a very emotional thing for Mackenzie and stuff. So I was like, so you just be prepared. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's going to be fists, and there's going to be crying, and there's going to be anger and all of the things. I said, but on the other side of things, I see it being a very healing experience for his kids as well, and having the ability to tell them exactly how they feel, and whatever, that kind of thing. So, but I was like, but I told her all that, and she goes, well, we all want to throw down with him. And I was like, yes. I'm like, fair enough. I said, but the only big flash that I got was the what's going to happen between, the oldest son and him. So I'm like, just be prepared. I'm like, it's not going to be the prettiest scene, but it's probably possibly a necessary scene that might, will generally help him heal and move forward. Not that he doesn't
Mhm.
have like big tools in me as well, but I think there's still like that. I think there's still a really bigger healing that can come in to actually have that face to face with the person that, gave you life and then like wrecked your life in a sense. So I don't know. Um, but yeah, so it was a pretty intense. This whole weekend was kind of very, I guess, yeah, it's only Tuesday now. This whole weekend was very intense.
Yeah.
Nice. So Brandon's been making these, and
Oh,
they're
cool.
bracelets. So I'm probably gonna start
Mhm.
selling these. These ones are really neat. Like as I got
It's
mine on,
super thick. Yeah.
got a necklace, and
Oh, so
yeah, this
cool.
one is actually super super thick. Mine's a like in comparison.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's all blurred, but yeah, it's the same amount of thread, but this one is in twos and these ones are in threes.
Wow.
So
What is it called? Braided cord, or what is it called?
this is paracord, and
Paracord.
and yeah, and it's braided, weaved. Yeah, what style of knot is this one? Do you know?
This one is a cobra tail. No,
That-
sorry.
Okay, he's got to Google it. This one, the ones of trilobite. These ones are called trilobite weave, and he's got to Google the one that I just showed you. Oh,
Wow. That's really cool though.
yeah. So I was somebody has seen these in one of my broadcasts, and she's like, "Oh, you should sell those." And I was like, "Well, I only have one, so
Yeah.
I'll have to
Just
get
sell the
more.
one.
Just sell the one, yeah, put it up for sale." But I mean,
Oh, you
they're
can make those.
yeah, you can make them in 5 minutes, and it doesn't take a whole lot of
Wow.
cord, and the cords aren't that expensive. So it's like, yeah, well, let's start making them. And then he just started going off on the bracelet. So I'm probably gonna put them in my store on the website. And
They call that one a sanctified weed.
sanctified weave is the other one.
That's
But yeah,
really cool.
they're
I like the blue. I like the blue
yeah, I like the
photo.
blue too. Yeah,
Blue and black.
the blue and black. I want them to get. I want to get white paracord and make red and white ones for Canada Day.
Mm.
Those ones I probably make.
Is that like your guys' is like how we have 4th of July?
Yeah,
easier, but
yeah.
not
July 1st is Canada Day and July 4th is 4th of
Okay.
July. Yeah,
Okay.
red and blue
Okay.
ones.
yeah, yeah. We can make you red, white, and blue ones and send you a pile of them to sell for
I'm not,
July 4th.
like I'm grateful and everything, but I'm not one of those.
I get it.
I don't know how to explain it. Like my husband was talking about how his dad, who is like from here, born and raised in the United States, he's like, he's not a huge fan of the United States. And I'm like, he doesn't live here anymore. And I was like, I live here and I'm not a huge fan of the United States, right?
Business
I mean, like
cards.
it's like I'm not against it or anything. I'm not for or against anything necessarily, but like I don't know.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was like, why don't we just go live in another country? But I mean, again, I've also never been out of the country besides to Canada and to the Bahamas. So I mean, it may be
Yeah,
that
and
grass seems greener on the other side because you're staying on this side thing. Um,
yeah. Well,
I
yeah,
don't
exactly. So, and for me, and then actually touches on a really good point because it's if you're not changing who you are as a person, the problems that you have, no matter where you go, you're going to find the
know. Oh
same
yeah.
type of people. You're going to find the same type of problems. But in shifting your identity and not finding peace where you're at, there's actually a gentleman on TikTok that I seen where he reads you with like, I don't know if it's like your birthday or your life numbers or whatever, but it's something to do with your numbers. And he actually tells you where in the world it has your best flow of energy. And
Wow.
I
Interesting.
can say that my flow of energy is definitely within British Columbia. This is a place that I've always felt called to. I don't think here specifically where we're at, but
Yeah.
there was definitely something in that contrast between yesterday, how I felt versus today, and even as that progressed through yesterday. And a reason why Kelowna in particular is where we are at right now, even though not it's not the funnest place. There is a lot to explore, but it's not in the general like in this exact vicinity. As for like land that we can be on, we're pretty much on it until, I can buy a piece of property or whatever, right? Like there isn't a lot, but then at the same time, there is a lot. And there's that finding that contentment and like a whole different, but like I mean the energy here is amazing. And if there's like I mean, other than the fact that I mean it's probably gonna be almost as hard on the car, but if maybe not, but there's like this space up towards where I want to host that healing retreat.
Oh yeah.
And there's like a lot of little turnoffs there where you can like pull in and camp and do your thing. And so, I almost want to go up there, but then it's like longer to get home, longer to get down.
Yeah.
Uh, and that kind of thing. But the road is a little bit nicer than one we drive into. So, it's kind of like give and take, kind
Yeah.
of just have to kind of drive around, I think, and really decide on what's going to be the next course of action. Because regardless, we have to right now until the universe says, here's all your clients, here's your full bank account, and then I can buy the truck that I want, or, maybe somebody just says, hey, here's a gift for you. Here's your truck that you really, really want, regardless, however that goes down, we'll see. But but we need
Yeah.
something. This thing that I'm sitting in is not capable of pulling our home right now. So, so whether we rent something to move essentially, or whatever, but I definitely don't want to go closer to town. Like I don't want to go closer to people. I definitely would take it further away from people. And and it's not a big deal. I only technically have to be in Kelowna like once a week or once every other week for my volunteering. But I up in like but for this next month I have my mentoring, which is once a week. And then after that it's like, they want me to volunteer like an hour. I think it was an hour a month or something like that. Like I only have to volunteer once a month is the time frame, or once a week if I can, but at least once a month kind of thing. So, uh, and that's absolutely fine. I've already signed up for, like, I want to be the mascot, so I signed up to be the mascot for this
Oh,
children's
that's
bicycle race. Like, I'm
yeah.
so excited. I get to be
That
a
is
Y.
so fun.
I don't know why I'm so freaking, I don't know, it just makes me so happy. Like,
That is
I was
so
like
fun.
pondering what I
Like,
wanted to be. I was like, I don't know what I want to do here. And I'm like, I want to be the mascot. I do. I've always wanted to be a mascot. So I'm gonna be a mascot.
wow. You'll have to send me
Yep.
pictures. That's
I will
hilarious.
send you pictures,
So much fun.
definitely.
So
Oh my
much.
goodness. But yeah, so like the energy in BC itself definitely calls to me. But then I look back at when my appendix burst, and I seen myself being the owner of a island outside the coast of Belize and hosting, like, in my head I was like, it was like a B&B style thing, but I think it's where I'm going to host retreats. Like, and I literally woke up, because I mean I was on so much morphine, to be fair, but but that's a good way to get behind your ego as well. And in
Yeah.
my mind, I bought an island and was hosting, like, having people there, which would truly actually make sense, in the sense that I want to host healing retreats in Belize and having my
Yeah.
own island. I can have, like, there's literally nothing attached to you to wreck the energy, and so it can be blessed and stay blessed without without the consistent traffic of other bodies going by and driving through and stuff like that. And it really, maybe and it doesn't even feel unreal to me anymore. Like, I was going to say, like, maybe it feels unreal, but I'm like, it doesn't even feel unreal. There was a point I know when I, like, sobered up and I was, like, giggling about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like, as if that could ever happen. And I'm, like, looking at how everything's coming together, and I'm like, maybe that's what's going to happen. I,
Wow.
I, but I don't see it like that's like a long term, like, because I was like, well, I don't really have any long term goals. And I'm like, but I could see that being something that I would call a long term goal. And not because, and it's funny because it's not because of money, more because of my parents. Like, my
Yeah.
dad is 73, my mom is 64. And so, like, in that or 65, my mom turned 65. So my dad would be 8 years older than that.
73?
73, yeah. So my mom's 65, my dad's 73. And oh, you turned me. And so I'm like, my dad hates ferries. If I can helicopter them to me, which, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I just don't know that they want to live out their retirement stuck on an island. So that kind of thing. Not that they'd be stuck, but my dad doesn't like to do boats very much. He's definitely not a ferry person. That's because they were going to go live on Vancouver Island, but they're like, no, that's not for us. And but yeah, so they turn around and they're like, so I'm like looking at that. So BC feels like a little bit more along the lines of somewhere that my entire family would be happy. That's not to say that I can't put in the works, getting set up on an island and stuff like that with the back and
Mhm.
forth. Like, looking at abundance as not an option, as birthright, and in the sense of the flow. Like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not even looking at it as, like, cost. It was generally like, well, my parents wouldn't be happy on an island, was kind of what kind of came
Mhm.
through. And I'm like, but I can still get that set up and go back and forth, and and they can
Mhm.
travel to me and spend weeks and months with me if they want, and that kind of thing. And God, do I want to be on the island during storm season in Belize? Probably not. I've seen the disruption. I'm like, I'll just go back and clean up my house after it's all said and done, right? So yeah. So I mean, there's so many interesting, like, things that kind of, like, come back to me in even, like, the last little while, that I'm like, well, that actually seems like legit. But I would almost want to talk to that guy and see what he would say in that, because Chile comes to mind. I've always wanted to kind of maybe check out, like, a spot in Chile. It's very inexpensive to buy and build there. Uh, but yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind to leave North America. And generally because I think it's right now, there's got to be a shift in the people's mentality. I'm not, it's not even really I'm not so worried about our governments and what they're doing. I mean, they're going to do what they do. We
Yeah.
can't change that until we change the mentality. because everybody's like, I don't want liberal, but they weren't pro something else. So it's kind of like in The Voice of the Secret. It's like, well, if you don't want something, then you have to be pro something else.
Yeah.
And so they got the liberals, of course, now are back in power, and everybody's whining about it. And I'm like, yep, well, you weren't pro something else. You were just anti-liberal, and now we're liberal. We're a liberal minority, thankfully, again, but so they don't get all the say. They can't just, stomp all over the ground without the minority
By not making a show.
agreeing.
This is like, okay, I'm sure you probably like see me keep looking up and I'm listening
Yeah.
to you, but like this so our front porch, right? It's like an overhang and there's a lot of space up here because it's so tall. And these birds have like literally been and there's like these pillars. There's like 3 pillars. So there's right, and they have literally been like circling. They'll come through up, but there's nothing up there. Like there's lights, but it's built in, so there's nothing that they can. I mean, we do have a ladder, but I think it's kind of on an incline for them. But they're literally just like circling. Like they'll come in, they'll fly up to the ceiling of it, and then fly and then around and like up and around and up and around. And they've been doing this since this morning. My husband was like, "What is like looking to see like what are they? There's nothing in there for them to like perch on or anything." But they have literally, and then they just started doing it again, and like 2, 3 of them at a time are like in there,
Oh.
and I don't know if they're looking, but I mean, you'd think they would have already noticed by now that there's nothing in there for them to build a nest. Um, I mean, this morning I had to Google it. I'm like, how can you help like birds make, can I like, I don't know, can I put something up there but it's just wild that like they literally just keep, like I said, 3 at a time, and they're just kind of they'll circle it in there, and then they'll fly out, and then they'll fly back in and kind of just like do
Oh.
the thing. And I'm like, what in the world? I was almost gonna see if, well, this isn't a flip camera, but
Yeah,
so I could show you, but like that's just wild. I've never experienced
that's
that
really
before.
interesting. Yeah, you should take
Because
a video of it after we're done and send it to me. And like,
yeah,
yeah,
like
if they're
what in the
still doing it
world
anyway.
is going
That's
on?
really interesting. Yeah, when I was glancing off, it was funny because I was interrupting myself, I guess. But yeah, the prairie dogs, the the gophers and stuff,
Oh my gosh, I love
they
it.
were like chasing and biting each other, and I was like laughing. I was like, "Where's my cat?" And then instantly the cat come out, and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's the cat."
Oh, how sweet. I
Yeah,
think it's gonna
they're funny.
I think it's gonna rain today.
Yeah, here too. It's been looking like it might rain today, but I'm actually gonna have to hop off here though.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I have a call at 1 for possibly another podcast
Oh,
type thing.
cool.
So I just got to kind of prepare myself for that. Um, but yeah, no, we'll do this again. I'm gonna hit the stop record here though. So this was
Okay.
fun.
Yes.
And next week, welcome. We can come join us again next week and listen to us banter and
I was gonna
banter.
say, I don't know the topic, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
Right.
figure